It was dragged along the tracks, finally hitting the switch arm about 2 blocks west of 30th Street. As it hit the switch, the car is derailed. This version fits with passenger Mark Robinson's description of what he heard as they left 30th Street.
Before we left here, you could hear something hitting under it, going bam, 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 bam. And by the time it got there, the thing just, boom, it jumped all of a sudden.
SEPTA won't discuss any specifics pending an investigation, but officials confirm in the wake of this tragedy, all the L fleet cars are being visibly inspected to make sure the L is safe to ride.
I believe I can say that all of the professional staff believe that the system is safe. If there is any question whatsoever, I assure you we would close down the system.
While SEPTA says the L system is safe to ride, transit sources tell Eyewitness News that a visual inspection cannot necessarily detect the kind of mental fatigue involved in this accident. The L system is now about 30 years old, the end of its lifespan, and sources say the details of this accident dramatize the dangers of that aging fleet. Sources tell Eyewitness News the L car was inspected just last month on February 10th. But today, a bolt holding that traction motor to the car broke loose. A safety bar caught it, but sources say apparently the weight of the loose motor broke the metal brackets that attached the entire motor device to the train. That's what was dragging along the tracks, heading for disaster. So tonight, the hard questions are just beginning as we await word from the National Transportation Safety Board's investigation. Back to you.
Tia, if the inspectors can't see the problem, how can they be sure the trains are safe?
Well, according to transit experts that I've talked to, they say really the only way is to send the piece of equipment.
These scars on these railroad ties would seem to indicate that is probable. It's believed that broken equipment could have forced the derailment at the switch point. SEPTA General Manager Lou Gambaccini could not directly confirm that theory, but did say a fleet-wide inspection of L cars has been ordered.
We will be undertaking an inspection of the parts that we think might have been involved on a 100% basis today to assure that with respect to our concerns at this point, there is no question about their continued operation.
The entire fleet?
Yes, the entire fleet.
Now, an NTSB probe like this can take months. However, as we mentioned earlier, it's hoped that there at least will be some sort of preliminary indication of what went wrong and what was the cause tonight at that 7:30 briefing that we're expecting from the NTSB. As for SEPTA's plans, they are hopeful, and I should stress hopeful, that they should be able to get the L into full operation by the end of this week. I'm John Rawlins, live on the Action Cam in Center City.
Thank you, John. A major section of the Market-Frankford L has been out of service since the accident and will likely stay that way until sometime tomorrow afternoon. The question now is, what will all of this do to traffic patterns in and around Philadelphia? We are now live from Chopper 6, and fortunately most of the arteries and Center City streets leading out of the city have been relatively normal, but tens of thousands of train commuters have had to change their routine this afternoon, and that's where SEPTA's contingency plans come in. Let's switch live to Action News reporter Dan Quaya, who is at 15th and Chestnut in Center City. And Dan, you've got all the transit details.
Well, Jim, believe it or not, things are almost back to normal here in Center City. The steady stream of emergency shuttle buses on Chestnut Street continues, although most commuters have boarded earlier buses and are well on their way home, if not already. A remarkable effort in terms of organization, despite earlier confusion and a shortage of police officers early on to close Chestnut Street. Most of them were on the scene of the accident. They're here to allow this exodus of shuttle buses and keeping vehicular traffic off of Chestnut Street. Also remarkable, the good-natured way in which most commuters have handled this mess despite it all. Chestnut Street will remain closed to traffic from 5th to 60th Street through late tomorrow morning, and the Frankfurt L between 15th and 52nd will also remain closed through at least mid-afternoon tomorrow. In addition to all those other numbers we've been giving you, you may want to jot this one down for any and all information related to the accident. It's set up by the city's emergency management team. The number is 574-1120. 574-1120 for any and all information related to the accident. So there you have it. Things just about back to normal here in Center City tonight, although more congestion than usual is expected for rush hour tomorrow morning. I'm Dan Quaid, live on the Action Cam.
Thank you, Dan. Whenever you have an accident of this magnitude, there are always many stories that don't make the headlines. They are stories about people, stories that might go unnoticed in the urgency of the moment. But tonight, we have several of those stories from Kathy Gandolfo and first Lucy Yang.
As ambulance after ambulance raced up to the emergency room, Paula Bolden's
story on Action News tonight is the aftermath of today's deadly mishap on the Market-Frankford L. It is now being called the worst SEPTA accident ever in Philadelphia. And these pictures of the mangled train in the tunnel beneath West Philadelphia make you wonder how more people weren't killed. As it stands, 3 people have died, including a woman whose leg was amputated at the scene of the crash in order to free her from the wreckage. Kathy Gandolfo spoke to the doctor who performed the amputation.
Anything in your training that ever prepares you for anything like this?
Not really. I guess, wars do, but we haven't had one for a while.
The train derailed at 8:30 this morning, shortly after it left 30th Street for the 69th Street terminal. Hundreds of emergency personnel converged on the scene to rescue passengers, some of whom were trapped for hours. It was a harrowing ordeal.
The train just seemed like it was jumping up and down, and people were falling all over, and the lights went out, and it was smoking, and just horrible.
Fire Chief Roger Olshafer described the desperate scene inside the car that was virtually ripped in two.
They were entangled in not only the seats, but the floor and the sides of the car when that was scissored in half by the poles when the train derailed. So they were actually wearing the metal all around their legs and their bodies from the sides and the floor of the cars.
One of the passengers, a reverend, was allowed in the tunnel, which he described this way. It was like being in a tunnel in your very worst nightmare. Action News reporter Mark Howard is now live at 30th Street Station. Mark, you have been tracking the investigation, which is now in the hands of the National Transportation Safety Board.
That's right, Jim. They've taken charge of the situation. As you can see behind me, the gates on all the stations near the accident have been locked tight tonight. The only activity inside is SEPTA workers who are setting up lights for the investigation. The federal investigators will be here at 8 a.m. in the morning sharp.
Good evening.
Earlier tonight, John Lauber of the Safety Board met with us to explain the investigation. For one thing, he'll have no answer to what caused the accident till his final report at least 9 months from now. He did say that drug tests have been given to all SEPTA workers involved, but he has no results yet. As for the possible cause, we've been focusing on a loose drive motor seen left of center here hanging under a car in front of the death car. There are chips in the railroad ties for a quarter mile before the wreck. Lauber admits that that motor, which seems to have hit these ties, could be the cause.
We did, in fact, look at the traction motor that is hanging down. Whether or not that is the result or the cause of the accident is, is anybody's guess at this point. That's why we're here to understand exactly what the significance of that is.
If the motor caused the deadly wreck, here's probably how it happened. The train left 30th Street Station heading west, and then the motor broke loose, hitting those ties. At the crash site, it could have hit a switch, which shunted the death car into the I-beams which hold up Market Street above. The car was broken in half and sheared open like a sardine can. Beginning early tomorrow, the Safety Board people will examine every inch of the scene, photographing details and measuring critical distances. They hope to finish by tomorrow evening. Then SEPTA will begin the tough job of cleaning up the tracks and getting the L running again. One worker on the scene told me that job could take 36 hours, meaning no L service again on Friday. One footnote, by the way, to this investigation, Dr. Lauber suggested that if that train motor did cause the accident, he might call for an investigation of all the motors on all the L cars, and he could order the system shut down until he's satisfied the cars are safe. Meanwhile, no L service tomorrow, and probably none on Friday. I'm Mark Howard, Channel 6 Action News, West Philadelphia.
And officials have just now released the names of 2 of the 3 people who were killed today. 52-year-old Господин Kachev of the Frankford section of Philadelphia and 34-year-old Denise Devlin of Juniata Park. The third fatality, the third victim, still unidentified to us. Okay, let's go live to Action News reporter Dan Quayer in Center City. Dan, you have been covering the mass transit situation, and apparently a change in plans tonight caused a lot of confusion and some degree of aggravation.
Yes, a bit of confusion here tonight, Jim, to say the least. What happened is the emergency shuttle service has been moved tonight from Chestnut Street to Market Street, apparently because police did not have enough manpower to keep 55 blocks of Chestnut Street closed through tomorrow. Market is apparently wide enough to allow regular traffic to continue at least tonight to allow the shuttle service. Now, when they moved it, that's when things went crazy.
Emergency service on Market-Frankford westbound. Front and center doors, please.
It was around 7 o'clock that SEPTA moved its emergency shuttle service from Chestnut to 15th and Market Streets. The problem is some key SEPTA people apparently didn't know about the switch and were still telling commuters to go to 15th and Chestnut, where some waited for a long time for buses that weren't going to show.
None of y'all knew that there were not going to be no buses?
No. That's why we standing here. They told us because we thought they were going to be ready.
SEPTA driver on the C bus just now told us to come right here and wait for the shuttle bus.
And there's no bus to be found.
No.
It made me 2 hours late for work.
We found part of the problem with SEPTA personnel down on the Market-Frankford line. Where are the people supposed to go, the people that they're trying to get transferred?
You're supposed to go to 15th and Chestnut Street.
Where's that?
15th and Chestnut.
He's telling everybody to go to 15th and Chestnut.
Yeah.
Okay. 42 to car, 30.
Shortly before 9 and after a bit of huddling between officials.
Okay, it's been already given to Control Center already, and they're having it corrected.
Earlier today, the mass exodus from Center City was running pretty smoothly and seemed well organized, despite some initial confusion. Police didn't have enough manpower to shut down Chestnut Street between 5th and 60th Street until almost an hour later than had been planned. When they finally arrived, the emergency made police communication difficult.
I haven't been able to get through radio, Charlie. When you get through radio, tell them I'm here.
For over 2 hours straight, people packed into shuttle buses like sardines trying to get home, most of them taking the mess in stride, as were SEPTA bus drivers. One lady tonight didn't mind the delays. She was just glad that through an act of fate, her daughter-in-law missed a train that derailed, a train she usually takes.
My son didn't like her driving to work on I-95, so she started taking the L, and I said to her, now she's taking a bike.
Okay, here's the situation as far as tomorrow's rush hour traffic through Center City is concerned in the morning. The emergency shuttle buses, of course, will be running on Market Street between 5th and 63rd Street for those people needing to get around through the Center City area who are unable to get the regular train service. Accordingly, Market Street will be closed in both directions from 15th to 52nd Streets until midday tomorrow. And of course, the Market-Frankford L will remain closed between 15th and 52nd Streets because of the accident. And at this point, it's unclear how long that will be. Bottom line is, if you need to get to or through Center City tomorrow morning, better leave early. I'm Dan Quayette, live on the Action Cam in Center City.
Thank you, Dan. Again, 3 people have died, and by our count, about 160 others were injured. The last passenger removed from the wreckage was Eric Van Johnson, age 25, of South Philadelphia. He was trapped in the train for 4.5 hours, his legs pinned by shards of mangled metal. Well, they finally cut Eric out and rushed him to surgery at the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. He was in the operating room for almost 3 hours tonight as doctors worked to save his legs. He is critical. Action News reporter David Henry has more on the victims of the city's worst transit accident ever.
Through the window.
Almost 12 hours after the accident, doctors were still evaluating Charles Berry at Hahnemann University Hospital. We caught him on his way to a CAT scan.
I was in a state of shock, you know, everybody hollering, lights was off, smokes everywhere, metals flying, you know, all over the train and stuff.
So you woke up and didn't know where you were?
I didn't know where I was at.
Charles was with his brother-in-law, who helped him out of the wreckage.
The impact knocked me over the seat, like two seats up, you know, and I struggled to get up, and I saw him lying there unconscious.
Hahnemann's emergency room staff handled 26 victims. In all, about 170 people were rushed to 10 city hospitals. The hospitals hold drills preparing for days like this. But the real thing is always a test of human endurance.
We had patients in the hallway. We had a lot of patients to be seen from the accident, a lot of people running around.
For the most part, it was controlled chaos, and social worker LYNNE Major was there, making sure no one got lost in the shuffle.
Initially, people were just real concerned about making sure that their work and their families knew they were okay. And as I went back in later in the day, they needed to talk about what had happened and kind of share what was going on with them. And they were pretty anxious.
Anxious, and in most cases, just happy to be alive.
I thank God I'm alive.
Despite their injuries, Charles and Neil and the other survivors are the lucky ones. The bodies of the 3 people who died in the crash were brought here to the medical examiner's office, where their families have had the grim task of identifying them. David Henry, Channel 6 Action News, West Philadelphia.
And so that is our story tonight. A terrible day for SEPTA, but far worse for the families of the 3 people who did not survive the ordeal, and for the passengers who suffered critical injuries today. Of course, tomorrow morning will be a challenge for the tens of thousands of commuters who normally take the L to work. And Action News will have special transit reports starting at 5:58 in the morning and 6:30 a.m. and throughout the morning rush hour.